First item on the agenda, general public comment. This is provision to encourage the expression of questions and concerns regarding non-public hearing items and issues not on the agenda. Open Meetings Act spot on our agenda. So any Open Meetings Act related questions, comments in the crowd? It looks like everyone in the crowd is one of our mining operators. So we will move on with no public comment being offered to item number 3 on the agenda, which is generally called the Goodale Sand Pit. And addresses are 2610 O'Brien Southwest, 2851 Butterworth Southwest. This hearing was requested by the applicants, Goodale Sand Pit LLC. And we can verify the postcards were sent to neighboring property owners within 500 feet of the site, in compliance with Chapter 34 of the Walker Code. And this case will be reviewed as a public hearing. So what I will do is let me give a little bit of a schedule from last year just to frame everything up and look at some conditions from last year. We held a mineral mining review of this site on February 12th of 19, and then we followed up on September 17th with an on-site visit. And then we held another mineral mining meeting on November 26th. So let's look back at what those conditions were. From the February 12th, 2019 mineral mining meeting, the motion was made and approved to approve the mining license for 19, subject to the following 3 conditions. Soil erosion fees to be paid by March 1st. A 6-month on-site visit, which was done. And we would review the end-use plan, reclamation plan, updated topography, and the written agreement with Meekoff to match the property line corners and contours, and then verification that the performance bond is current by March 1st of 19. So then we had our meeting in the field. And then on November 26th, we held another public hearing for this site. And looking at those minutes, we summarized that the applicant has supplied all requested items. And the next step will be for them to apply for the 2020 permit. No further action needed at this time. However, there were some issues with the fill on the site and the material that was in the fill. So I'm sure we'll talk about that today. And I also have one email that I'll read into the record as public comment. So why don't I turn it over, at least for preliminary comments from the board, and we'll keep it moving that way. Any preliminary comments?
Can I just clarify? So what we are primarily concerned with today is the fill.
It will be the mining and the fill.
Okay.
And we'll ask these folks to throw their plan up on the screen like the first meeting. But
I mean, there is some talk in these notes about getting samples, and that's like, is that kind of our primary concern, Scott?
I think from last year, as far as follow-up, that was a big concern.
Okay, all right, that's what I wanted to say.
for the benefit of our new
Thanks.
city commissioner and board member, the area to the north next to that number 3 is proposed mining area.
Okay,
And then the area towards the south was what was filled.
okay,
So they have supplied compaction tests for that area that was filled.
okay,
We took a look over the edge out there last year, and it did appear that there was quite a bit of material that shouldn't be there in the fill. So I'm sure we'll comment on that today.
okay, thank you.
Okay. Why don't we go to public hearing? If we could open the public hearing by a motion. Do we have support?
Support.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Public hearing is open. Anyone from the public who has comments on this, feel free to come up to the podium. Well, you're thinking about that, because I don't see anybody coming up. Mr. Cordes, you going to say anything? No. Okay. So, let's read this into the record. This is an email that we received on February 17th from Jackie Bowman, and she lives adjacent to the entry drive to this mine. And let's just read it verbatim into the record. I've already supplied this email to Laura so she can cut and paste it into the minutes. Dear Mineral Mining Review Board, thank you so much for taking the time to consider our concerns. As neighbors of the Goodale sand pit, I first want to say that I understand that I bought the property located next to a sand pit. However, when we bought the property, we were told that the area behind our house was already reclaimed and that any mining would be done far in the back along O'Brien. This brings up two questions. Number one, does mining of the land include bringing this excessive amount of dirt in, or does mining mean getting the sand out? Number two, must the access point be right in my backyard along the reclaimed portion of this property? Had I known that active mining would be occurring this close to my home, I would not have bought the property. We were sure that this area had been reclaimed, meaning no more mining could occur at this point. I understand that the remaining sand could be taken out at any time, but did not realize that we would be using the drive so close to my home. If there is any possible way to access the mining area from the drive down the road, it would be greatly appreciated. The trucks cause excessive amounts of noise, dust, and danger. The noise and dust will make it impossible to open the windows, enjoying time in the yard gardening, or enjoy an afternoon in the yard with the children and grandchildren. The danger of large trucks makes it so that I am apprehensive to allow kids and the dog to play in the yard. Until you've experienced it, it is probably difficult to understand, but the potential danger of these trucks and the pollution they cause is quite disrupting. Although the noise, distress, and danger of the huge trucks near our home are a genuine concern of ours, my biggest concern is about the trash that has been dumped on the property. This fall, when my dog ran away chasing a rabbit, I had to cross onto the Goodale property to get him. It saddened me to see the amount of trash that had been buried under 20 feet of dirt. I'm a new resident of Walker and find it to be a great place to live. The people are wonderful, and access to the largest county park in the nation is quite a blessing. The coolest thing about this area is that Kent County has taken land that has been mistreated and dumped on and made it a beautiful place for families, athletes, and city visitors to get together and enjoy the outdoors. What a blessing to our area. If I had money, I would love to invest in beautifying this area to bring in visitors and revenue. However, I am barely affording the small piece of property that I do have because I love this area so much. It saddened me to see tires, drainage tiles, chunks of concrete, curbs, and sheets of plastic being recklessly thrown onto a beautiful piece of property. This may be an easy short-term fix as they look for places to put all the junk that had to be removed from the corner of Lake Michigan Drive in Wilson, but when property owners go to dig for their new homes someday, they're going to be vastly disappointed, not to mention the effect it has on our water supply. I'm asking Mr. Goodale to remove the garbage and refrain from dumping more trash at that site. Another concern of mine is the grading of the land. At the first meeting we attended after moving into our home, it was discussed that the land level was supposed to be no higher than 650 feet. I don't know what it has been up until currently, but it is quite a bit above our home, which sits at 650 feet. Our home already has 30 to 50 feet of dirt built up around it, all of which dumps water into my yard. To have yet more runoff heading my direction makes me nervous. Our property sees a ton and has lots of mosquitoes because of it. Again, I have a roof over my head and we both eat every day, so it is a first world problem. But if by asking you to try to keep the level to a reasonable height of 650, I can prevent future water problems, I thought it was worth a try. Thank you so much for hearing my concerns. Sorry about the length of the letter. Jackie Bauman. So that one will go into the record. Raises a couple of legitimate issues. Any further public comment? Then I would look for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Support?
Support.
All those in favor say aye. 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 Opposed? Okay, why don't we hand it over to the applicants, if you would walk us through your plans, what you did last year, what you propose to do this year, and then we'll get interaction with the board.
So that area, that fill
That's gonna be screened and, correct?
Yeah, I forgot to press the button, so.
No, but I'm
I'm
just saying,
slashing my own throat there.
but that will be on our agenda to have that done. That will be included. As far as the permit, it'd be a stipulation to have that process either done now or in the future.
That's my number one priority. That's why I spoke up.
Yeah, I'd like to see, I was just crafting one of the conditions to have a note pertaining to what's there, how that will be screened, and then list a new stockpile area for any additional fill in that back area.
The tire, I'll just add, the tires and the wood that was sitting there, that was actually the scrap pile that you saw off of Westtown. That's why it was there at the end, because the truckers hauled that to this site, and they were supposed to haul it to the landfill. So they've taken most of that out of there. We got to double check and confirm it's out of there. But that was literally the junk that was dug up out of the edge of that Westtown site that was brought over there. So it's not like all that dirt was that way. It was just, that was the scrap pile that was left.
Additional comments from the board, feel free.
We've been getting a lot of complaints about tracking. A lot of those have gone away now. I've seen on the Westtown site to transport that fill dirt down there. The trucks have been stopping on the pavement, and that's been keeping Wilson a lot cleaner. And then down here, I saw that the cattle guard grate was in that driveway. So that seems like it's really been helping. I haven't heard anything from folks down there, and I just wanted to note that that should just be shown on the soil erosion plan with whatever maintenance schedule or process is required for that control.
So I just want to make sure if we can go back to that letter from the resident, that the things we're talking about here, so as I understand it, screening that fill and getting that all cleaned up, that addresses the trash issue. And the water, or the grading, what was it, that's built up too high, and so there's stormwater coming into their yard? Is that what another concern she had?
It sounds like I haven't interacted with that as much. And so when I've been out there, it kind of looks like there is a little bit of a guard from additional water going onto her property. So I'm not entirely clear what area she's referring to with that stormwater drainage.
Is that something I
was gonna say, historically, the water has gone down the east side of the driveway, and there's a little sedimentation basin kind of down by Butterworth where it would go into the road after it kind of cleans itself out a little bit. But I think as that area was filled up, she's probably right, that the water started to tip a little bit differently and maybe didn't get to the east side. Now, if they can get that 10 feet knocked back down, hopefully that will take care of a lot of that.
And that's one of the considerations where
I think so.
Okay.
And then they've also shown a little bit of a retention area just off to the east of that fill area that not only is supposed to help during construction, but when this is fully developed. So I think the hope is the water would go into that hole and go back into the ground, and there would be no runoff.
Oh, okay.
True?
Yeah, that was the idea.
Okay.
Okay, all right, thanks. And then with regards to the drive, I understand that's established and there's a gate there and that sort of thing. Is there a fence too that blocks
Yep.
from there? So it's really just a visual issue more than a physical safety issue?
And probably just a noise of operation.
Yeah.
The challenge is, and I responded to her, Mrs. Bauman's email, and tried to give her some answers to those three questions. And, my first response was bear with me for 1 second, regarding that drive. Essentially, it was something that's been approved for years. And I don't like to use the excuse, that's the way we've always done it. I think that's a cop-out. But this one, my answer to her was regarding question 1, which is kind of a philosophical discussion we had this morning. Mining includes excavation and bringing in of clean fill to regrade the site. So that was her question about grade.
right,
You know,
yeah.
what is a mine, essentially was her first question. The second question she had was about the access point, and my response to her was the access point has been established and approved by the Mineral Mining Review Board. So they have brought that up to speed with the ordinance. The first 300 feet is what do you want to call it? It's
I
like,
think it says paved.
yeah, it's paved, it's non-erodible surface to hopefully rumble off some of the stuff that sticks to the truck. And then the third question about drainage, I said the sand mine is not allowed to drain water onto your property. The board will address that concern today.
Okay. All right.
So
That's fine.
those are the three questions
Okay. Okay.
and preliminary responses.
And I feel like we've addressed the runoff question?
Hopefully if the material comes out, it will.
Okay. All right, thanks.
All right, I've got two more. The oil well underneath the number 1 for phase 1, Pat, is that yours?
The one on the top of the
Yeah,
hill? No.
it's not yours, okay. We should get that labeled on there, the owner, and, because it's getting kind of precariously sitting up there now, right? Based on the contours, it's kind of up on a peninsula.
He has that. Is that what you said?
Well, I'd like to have the plan show who owns it
Oh,
and talk about how that's gonna be coordinated so that you don't leave him high and dry, just like you wouldn't want him to leave you high and dry with one of those things, right?
we have an agreement, but we had it before, that if I want to take that down to ground level, that we can do that.
That'd be great to put a little note on the plan that you have an agreement with Christian Oil to do that, and if there's some paperwork associated with that that you can get to CDD for their office.
You should have had a copy of that in your mining stuff from before.
Okay, can you adjust the plan to show that it's owned by Crispin at least?
Yeah, we will.
Okay, that's an easy fix. The second one is when you look at the reclamation and use plan, the contours don't match up at all, so I'm not sure what happened, if they're from a different era, but as I look at where this fill area is specifically, kind of related to lots 28 and 20, we should make sure that those match up.
Yeah, I think what happened there was we put together this end use plan shortly after our field visit, and then realized that the fill was there, and we did the topo after that, so that the timing was such that the topo occurred after the end use plan, if that makes sense.
Okay, well, let's,
We need to update the end use plan to incorporate the newest topo.
yes.
We can do that.
Additional comments, Mr. Kent?
I'd just like to say, I realize that there's going to be spoils on jobs, and you're hauling sand to those jobs, hauling spoils, but we definitely need to stay on top of compaction, especially if it's going to be buildable property for future of the city and the people that build there.
And that's a good point that we didn't touch on, Dan. In the packet is the compaction testing that shows maybe it's compacted, maybe it's not. It's not very definitive. So I think getting that material out of there is gonna help a lot. And then you've got a little bit of a surcharge factor where having that there for a temporary period of time is gonna help to make sure that stuff underneath it's a little bit more compacted. But the best thing to do is just move it on down the road, head north.
Okay, additional comments, keep coming this way, Scott or Carol? This side, Gary?
I just got one question. You guys, you're gonna screen that? Where are you gonna set up the screener then? Is it,
Well, I don't know that we'd actually set up a screener. I think as we're pushing it off, we'll see
You're
what the
just
material is. A lot of that's clay, heavy
Okay.
soils,
yeah.
so you're not gonna screen clay.
You're not gonna
But
screen.
the intent is to get all the tire, the wood,
Okay,
and the plastic that was part of it that was taken off that West Town site.
okay.
How about if we call that visual screen?
That works. We don't want that there either. The excavator got their butt chewed out heavily. And you'll notice that the stuff that was off the site, the rest of the stuff off the site wasn't brought there.
Okay, anything further? Otherwise, I see Rachel crafting a motion.
It's gonna be a long one.
Go ahead.
All right, I'd like to motion to approve this mineral mining license, subject to the following conditions. Add a note to the area filled in 2019 that material will be visually screened and use this fill throughout the site with trash hauled off-site. Designate a new stockpile area and show on the plans for any additional fill brought onto the site. Show the cattle guard driveway control on plan with detail and maintenance schedule. Review stormwater drainage for site and adjust grades to prevent impacts on the adjacent properties. Include owner information on northeast oil well. Update end-use plan topo to correlate with reclamation plan. And then the two easy ones, submit updated bond information by March 1st and pay the soil erosion fees by March 1st.
Yes, she did. Yep.
Is there
Okay.
support?
Is there support?
I think Dan's gonna support it.
I'll support it.
Let's get support, and then we can discuss. There's support from Mr. Kent. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, Mr. Goodale, you have your permit for 2020 for these properties.
Thank you.
And again, Laura and I will get together following this meeting sometime this week, put together the punch list, make sure that the punch list gets out to all these folks, so we can follow up on all these conditions.
Do those conditions, like, they have to be, is there a time they have to be fulfilled by, or just upon, is it March 1st, or is it upon review?
Well, what we're going to do, just so that you folks know, March 1st is when we're going to be looking for all those conditions to be followed up on. And if worse comes to worse and conditions aren't followed up on, then we can always call this board back together. And then there is a enforcement provision in the code.
Okay.
That's civil infraction. Yes.
One clarification, if that ground's frozen by March 1st, it's gonna be hard to do any excavating on the top of that hill there.
I think it really means the plan changes. The physical
Yep.
stuff, I
Yeah.
think we gave you a year to do.
Good.
To-
The administrative stuff by March 1st.
We
In
can
the
do that.
field stuff this year.
Yeah, and the plan's just showing those
Good.
notes so that you're committed to them over the next year.
That works,
So,
thanks.
And then Rachel, if you can let us know as you go out to that site if you're seeing any progress on the fill being moved and screened. Okay, let's move to item 4 on the agenda, generally called the Stanley Orchards Mine, on properties at 2605 Bristol Northwest and 1784 3 Mile Northwest. This hearing has been requested by Stanley Orchards. Postcards were sent to neighboring property owners within 500 feet of the site, and this case will be reviewed as a public hearing. We had 2 Mineral Mining Board actions on this site in 2019. We held a meeting on February 12th, and that's where you received your permit for the year. And then we held an on-site visit on June 12th. At the February 12th meeting, the following 3 conditions were added. to your license, a soil erosion fees paid by March 1st, a 6-month review on site to be scheduled to look at, is that right? Yes, which we did hold, and then verification of the performance bond. Hold on, I'm looking at the wrong file. Someone's got to rein me in. I was like, wait a minute, this is not the Meekoff site. All right. So here are the conditions. That looks better. Brad Myers, that's the right one. Okay, there were actually 5 conditions placed on February 12th. Provide a recorded copy of the termination of the grading easement with mole belting when it is terminated. Provide an updated plan showing grading and reclamation schedule in the mole belting area. Plan is due March 1st. Will be reviewed by the board on a site visit in June, which I think we did. A new topo survey provided anywhere there is ongoing work. Soil erosion fees by March 1st, and then an end user plan and use plan. Primarily recording that the mine operator's interest to make sure the reclamation plan lines up with the future end use plan. We hear that quite often. And that can be a challenge as things change, but those were the 5 conditions placed on this site. Then we followed up with the site visit on 6/12. So that's where we're at. So we'll want to verify that all of those have been done. And I will look for preliminary feedback from the board. We looked at this one twice last year. Okay, why don't we open the public hearing via motion then?
I'll make the motion to open public hearing.
Do we have support? Support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, anyone who has comments on this project other than the operator, feel free to come on up to the podium. And I don't see anybody in the room. We'll see if the 2 gentlemen behind you. No comments? Okay. Why don't we get a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Do we have support? Support. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, public hearing is closed. We'll ask the applicant and his engineer to come on up, use the overhead, and tell us what you did last year, how you followed up on the conditions, and what you hope to do in 2020.
Good afternoon, I'm Brad Myers with Myers E&E's. A little overview of what has transpired the last year would be the continuation of working in phase 1, phase 2, with the goal to be cleaning up that the south portion right in through here and working our way to the southwest or to the northwest. To kind of reclaim this phase 2 into phase 1. The area along the critical area along that south side has been pretty much addressed. We were out there a couple times during the summer and this past fall to look at a couple of issues, undercut, things like that. We documented that, passed that along to the city for review. There were a couple areas that were a little deep, but other than that, it was pretty close to what was expected on our plans. There had been some adjustment along that south edge because when we first started this project, we had about a 15 to 20 foot differential right along those 2 industrial buildings back there, Mole, and then one just to the west of that. That area is the critical part, along with the slopes along the backside of the residential area. there, and there were some questions about the reseeding, and that had been done right after we went through. More seed was added, some more topsoil, taking care of some of the minor washouts in that area. Like I said, we're continuing to work basically to the east, trying to get that closed up, get everything to the west done, get this reclaimed up until where we have our main entrance coming out onto 3 Mile. I think we don't really have any problems there. I don't believe there was much for fill brought in at all. We have plenty of topsoil left on site. It's in the middle here for reclamation. This area has been reseeded. There's a flat area in there that's been reclaimed, and it's pretty well under growth, doing fairly well. There is a fence that will be needed to be installed along that south property line, and that's for these businesses, and they have agreed to that they were going to place that hopefully this spring. That gets done. That was one of the conditions with our agreement with those people. This year, looking to basically close up those 2 areas and work to the east, get up into some of this higher ground that there's a lot of material. I don't know of any issues with tracking on roadways or erosion or anything like that, so wasn't made aware of anything.
Okay, well, we'll probably get some comment back on that, just to see where you were at. Mr. Gordis, Mr. Wozniewski, anything further to add? Well, they're good so far, okay. Well, why don't we get into board comments then? So, and there we go. He defers his 2 minutes, or however they say that. Okay, open it up to the board. Feel free to offer comments.
You know, I won't turn that down, but I was up at the end of Waldorf Court, behind Mole Building and back in there. Looks a lot better and it's changed. The growth there at the end of Walker Woods on the hills really come in good. And so I would ask Brad, basically phase 1, phase 2 will be more than likely be done this year, or as far as the mining, and it'll be reclamation back that area, and probably the end of this season it'll be east of the drive, and for as far as any mining is going on.
That's the game plan. We're hoping to, by October, pretty much wrap up that end. Again, it's market driven, but it's something that we feel is in the works, and it should be obtainable at this point. But again, it's that market that gets us.
Oh yeah, but it's,
But it would be nice to wrap that part up, get that cleaned up, both for development purposes and for just taking care of an area, get it back to the sea.
that's the plan going forward.
Yes.
Okay. The rest of the board, feel free to comment.
I had 2 questions. I think you answered them, Brad. The area that's a little bit high underneath where it says phase 2 on the screen in front of us.
Yes.
It sounds like you mentioned that that's going to be moved over to the east. I'm hoping that means along that bank in phase 1. So is that all just overburden that just wasn't mineable? Okay, that makes sense. And then for Frank, the idea of Waldorf Court going through from the master plan, is that done?
You know, I think long-term street connectivity is a big thing, but it appears to be almost impossible to get done. So in this case, here's the situation. If someone wants to come in and propose the extension of that street, then we would certainly look into that. but it's not going to be shown on the master plan as a dotted line.
Okay.
The buildings are close together. Physically, it can work. There's no room for those businesses to expand except to the north. So logically, when you lay out a plan, it would look like that would work. But we haven't heard any interest. In fact, we've heard the reverse, particularly from Mo Belting. So we will keep the option open if somebody brings it in, but it won't be on the master plan map.
Looking at the conditions from 2019, we had a requirement to terminate the grading easement agreement from 2019. I'm not sure if that happened or if that's staying in place until this fence construction happens.
Or was it self-terminating? Because a lot of times those have a limit.
Yeah, it was a certain time after completion, and I'd have to check on that. I don't
Okay.
remember the exact version on that.
Yes.
I just, the finished site plan, is that something, sewer, water, everything will be on that? Did I miss that page?
Yeah.
There's nothing, I show
Yes,
no
sir.
utilities. There's a couple of wild cards out there, water matters for utilities.
It'll have to have utilities. But like you've had many different derivations of what this is going to look like, and it might be one of the closest ones we have to actually becoming real. So I don't know about you, Frank, but I feel pretty good that
Yeah.
it's being graded in such a fashion that's going to allow development.
And keep in mind that two things. Number one, it's 3 Mile in Bristol, so it's certainly in an area that needs to have full public utilities, water, sewer, drain, the whole bit. The other thing is we have an updated master plan specifically for this property. So whenever concepts come up, I always say to Mr. Wisniewski, let's take a look at the master plan. This is not something that's out of date or what have you. It's not waiting for the 2020 plan. Remember, we updated this sub-plan 1 a couple of years ago. So this one is current, and whatever that comes in will have to be consistent with the master plan.
So maybe it's important to say that for the record for others that aren't here today that might
Yeah.
listen to this or watch the minutes, that just because they don't have that shown in here doesn't mean that it's not being drawn up in even more intimate detail than what they have on their own sites, because it's part of a special master plan focus.
It's a sub-plan, laid out land uses, and obviously it's in a utility district as well, water and sewer. And now we just wait for plans to come in, and the first filter is the master plan. Anybody else over here? Okay. If you would, we're doing well on time, so let me just ask a couple of questions here, just to help us checking some boxes from last year. Did you folks provide, and we're short, Dan Power left the city, so we're transitioning. Tricia's our new planner. We certainly don't expect her to be immediately up to speed on everything, particularly Mineral Mining Board, so let me try to help out a little bit. Last year, did you guys provide a recorded copy of the termination agreement with Mole for grading?
There was some,
No.
there wasn't a termination.
Okay, you extended it for a year. Okay.
And so they were working towards that. They had different ideas of what's a fancy fence or what, but I said I want to build a white fence.
Yeah.
Makes good neighbors, kids and dogs and stay outside. That's what we're kind of shooting for, but they said they had a year to complete it under the contract, so
So one of my recommendations then would be for our condition that someone may be building for this year, that we receive either a recorded copy of the determination or some kind of written proof that your agreement with mole belting has been satisfied and closed. Okay, and this has a box to be checked. Are we okay with the topo data on the plan? This is a follow-up from last year.
Yes, that's been updated. There is a date, I don't remember which sheet it's on. We updated it twice this past fall,
Okay.
so there's 2 dates on sheet in here somewhere.
Okay,
It's in the revision notes too.
it's in the revision
Yeah.
notes. Okay, so we're good on that. Soil erosion, you're working with our engineering department, and Rachel's got that one taken care of. And then the end use plan, just making sure that our contours are matching between what you see on the excavation sheet and then on the end sheet. And I think you're doing pretty good there. Do I hear any objections to that?
Well, you know, they've got kind of a road penciled in down the middle, and we don't know what shape this is going to take, whether it's going to be 20 small industrial units or 1 large industrial unit. You know, I think the master plan covers you there.
Yeah, okay.
With that agreement, if it, that grading agreement, as far as the fence aspect, I kind of see that as a private issue. We were really only worried about the grading part. As far as the fence, that would just be permitted through CDD and kind of be outside of the realm of mineral mining. So I would just say, if we're going to make a condition about that agreement, just to show that any of the grading conditions have been met, and then kind of move on. Because if the fencing is a part of it, I don't think we really want to get involved with that.
Okay, any other comments for the record before we look for a motion? Good. All right, then I will entertain a motion.
The young person always has to make the motion.
Yes.
Has the performance bond been provided?
We need the performance bond, we have the fence letter.
All right, I will make a motion to approve the mineral mining license for 2020, based with the following conditions. Show that the agreement with the adjacent property owner, grading conditions have been met, pay soil erosion fees by March 1st, and provide the performance bond by March 1st.
Do we have support? Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Your license for 2020 is granted. Thank you. Okay, while everyone is shifting over here, let me read where we're at on the agenda. Item number 5, generally referred to as the Mines Golf Club LLC. The meeting was requested by operator Deanne Schimmel. Postcards were sent to neighboring property owners within 500 feet of the site, per Walker Chapter 34 of our code, and this case will be reviewed as a public hearing. Now, this one's a little unusual because we're coming to the end of this site. So last year, we actually had 3 interactions with this site from a board standpoint. We held a meeting in February, on February 19th, 2019 of the board, and we made a motion to close the mineral mining permit with 6 conditions. Then and I'll read those conditions in a second. Then we did an on-site meeting on 10/24 and saw that things were We're a little behind schedule, but we're moving in the right direction. So then we reviewed this plan again on November 26th at a board meeting. Didn't do any conditions, but said, apply for your formal closeout again in February 2020. So here's where we're at. So the conditions that were originally attached back in February of 19 were all mining extraction would end on March 1st, 2019. All mining-related trucking activity would end on March 1st, 19. The reclamation plan would be initiated with a completion date of September 1, 19. Soil erosion sedimentation fees by April 1. Submit a letter of credit for file, and that's our performance bonding, and then hold the on-site meeting to close out the checklist. So because things are running a little bit behind schedule, we agreed that we would allow things to continue on that site, and then we would initiate the true closeout starting in February here. Now, if you look at in section 34-308, A through F, there's a pretty simple punch list of items to complete in order to be eligible to have the mine closed out and your bond returned. So I think what we're going to do is we'll go through the motions here, but prior to the actual formal closeout, we need to do an on-site meeting, particularly with the engineer and the building official, and agree that this site is ready to close out. So it's going to be another 3-step process here this year. But let's go through the typical process that we do, and then we'll wrap it up at the end. And hopefully, this one will be completely done by the end of the year. So, with that said, why don't we do the public hearing, and then we can get into staff comments, because I know there will be some of those. So if we can get a motion to open the public hearing.
So move.
Support?
Support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Anyone here for a public hearing on this mine? Ron's got a question. Mr. Cordes, step up to the microphone there. Oh,
Oh, I can,
okay.
if you just want to drop that off here, if you guys are trying to get out of here, I'll leave it at the end.
There we go. Okay. All right. Any comments specific to Mr. Schimmel's mine? Okay. Then I'd like for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Support? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. So, Mr. Schimmel, if you can give us an update on what you did last year, what you hope to do this year. We have your application materials. We'll help put together a meeting schedule for this year. But if you can give us an update first, then we'll get into staff discussion. Could you click the button in the middle there, Dan? It'll turn the red light on. There you go.
Good afternoon, Dan Schimmel. I think I've submitted everything that we are asked to at this time. We have been in the process over the last couple months doing on-site grading, making some adjustments so that we can control our water. We are in the process of topsoiling bigger areas. The area to the west, we are continuing to take that elevation down, bringing that into the void. We still have some of that work to do. The perimeters, basically on the west side, north side, and a good share of the east side are vegetated. On the north side, it's probably vegetated maybe 350, 400 feet to the south, and then on the west along the swamp, we're about 150 feet, with the exception of there's a couple washout areas where we continue to drain water. There's silt fence up there. I would say we're on target to achieve. We were given the opportunity to bring material in there to through June. We are taking the opportunity now to grade such that if we don't get that material in there, we will be able to still reclaim, meeting all the slope conditions, the vegetation's conditions, maintaining our water. Kind of looked at it, where that hole is or where the void is now. If we don't get enough dirt either coming in, we can continue to bring it in from the westerly slope. And basically what we will do there then is kind of have a little valley that kind of dissects from, that'd be southeast to northwest, and there's a valley coming on the north of our property. It comes down from those houses and goes in a valley towards the swamp, and so those two would dissect. We would be able to control our water, and we're bringing in topsoil, and we have topsoil on site. Our goal is to have a good share more of the site topsoiled, and we want to take advantage of the spring weather to get that vegetated and the soil erosion stuff done. So I guess it appears that one way or another we will have this site closed out and vegetated to meet the requirements for the mineral mining portion of this.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Schimmel. There we go. All right, I'll open it up to the board for questions and comments. Feel free.
Last year, this mine has transitioned from kind of how I look at these sites for mineral mining to actually obtaining a separate soil erosion permit under a new number to cover the restoration. And there is also a stormwater permit obtained for this additional storm pipe that's being installed. So I think I'm pretty comfortable from that perspective. Just the last thing for the record is, because it's still kind of in this purgatory of being covered by mineral mining and the performance bond associated with that, I was allowing that to serve as the standard deposits for soil erosion and stormwater permits until the mineral mining portion was complete, and then transition that over to my permits. So I'm not sure quite how to do that administratively, but again, we're still looking at whether or not the mineral mining portion can be closed down. So I just wanted that on the record to look at that and work with Dan Schimmel as far as how that transition will work and the performance bonds, and making sure we have everything that we need covered.
And maybe to help out Carol and Gary, about a year ago, these guys came into the Planning Commission, and this is a little bit unique. They came in to get their golf course plan approved so that we could swap that out for the reclamation plan for the mine. So there isn't really a reclamation plan for this mine anymore. It's a development plan for the golf course, which has a little bit different restrictions. The buffers are a little bit less and some things like that.
We've tried to maintain the buffers, and I think we've done that on the sides that, well, north, the east, and to the west, which would fall under the mineral mining. We've kept the buffer back. We haven't turned the trees. We haven't taken the trees down. It's our intent at this time not to do that, to maintain it on the mineral mining board specifications because there was some, yeah, people didn't want it. So I guess that's a short version of it.
But when you look at that east slope, you see the contours go right up to the line, and you see a 1-on-3 slope. And, you know, you should say, hey, that doesn't seem right because it doesn't fit the ordinance. But that's the development plan that was submitted. Just as background.
I guess if we can, regarding that bond, I'd like to see it. I mean, a bond's a bond. It would, I mean, I guess it's more for procedure, how you guys view it.
When
So-
we get to that point, you and I can talk and work with CDD. I just need a different deposit. I just didn't want you to have 2 deposits on file at the city because the deposit for my permits would be
I don't want
$15,000.
deposits.
So I figure it's more fair to, when that's being closed out, to then make sure that, I have what I need for my permits.
Well, the the mineral mining bond is 25,000.
It's in place.
Is that in place through the end of this year? Because we don't have any
I
documentation.
think it expires, we've always had that. I don't know why ours is, but didn't ours expire in October or something
Yeah,
like
that's what I'm
that?
thinking.
But we've guys got a notice and it gets extended to February or March 1, I guess.
Okay.
So it's active right now, it's in place, and when that triggers, it gets renewed.
Okay. Well, looking ahead, I'm going to ask if you could have one of your staff email us a copy of that,
Of what?
of the bond as it is,
I
showing
think you
the,
have that.
I should have it somewhere, but
Oh, yeah.
it may be easier for you to get at it than me.
Oh,
Is there
probably
any?
not, but I will add, I'll see what I can do.
How about we both look and see who
All right.
finds it first,
All
okay?
right.
Because looking forward, based on the ordinance, how this would lay out would be you would have this season to convert that site into a golf course. October 2020, we would hold an on-site meeting, and it's actually the city engineer and the DPW director who give the blessing on the site that it's done, that it's closed. And then we would follow up in November with a mineral mining board to say you're done. And then we would release any bond if it's not already expired.
Okay.
Okay? And then we can tie that in with whatever you'll need with Rachel for stormwater.
Okay.
So I'm
And
going to ask Laura to put a note in the BSNA file or on our Outlook calendars that we need to schedule an on-site meeting at the Mines Golf Club in October, and then a public hearing in November. And if all goes well, everything will be, the boxes will all be checked in November, we'll be done. And then we'll all go, all right, golf course time, right? All right.
And I did drop off a soil erosion monthly fee check. They were gonna put it in your box.
Yep, I received that, and so that looks like that was about 8 months
Yeah.
paid.
Well, if it's, I mean, it's from, I think it's from February, yeah, so it's good through, if we owe you more money, we'll get it to you.
Okay, yeah, because the soil erosion permit expired October 31st, 2019, so those 8 months take you through July 1st, 2020. And I will email you a copy of that extended soil erosion permit.
All right.
So it's just a little bit different from years prior because we're now working on this different soil erosion permit for the restoration of the site, rather than what we have been doing in the past with mineral mining.
Okay.
Okay, well, let's get, we'll open it up. I tried to frame it up a little bit in case there were questions about process. But board members, feel free to jump on in with your comments.
What was the administrative extension for bringing Phil in?
There was a note, excuse me. Where was that? It was in our meeting from November 26th.
June something. And it had a number associated with it, I think of
Says-
40,000 yards.
Connors, which I assume is Scott Connors.
Fairly sure it wasn't me.
Okay, well, somebody
Thought it was
wrote
Dan
down.
Kent.
Maybe it was Dan Kent. Somebody stated, and the minutes say Connors,
He said, "Let the man get it filled."
let the man, they
I
said,
remember a more volatile meeting.
there was almost, it was
It wasn't
interesting.
volatile.
It
But
was
I thought there
interesting,
was an administrative decree of some
yes.
kind where you had said you can bring in so many cubic yards by such and such date. I think it's important that we get that into the public realm by getting that endorsed here.
Well, that was in our minutes of November 26, 19, which I think we approved at the morning meeting. And wherein it says, Connor stated for 40,000 more yards of fill being brought in over a 3-month period, April to June of 2020, to expect about 22 trailers a day on average. There will still be a lot of in and out activity.
That is totally true. I did say that.
And so that's where we're at.
But that wasn't a motion. That was a caution.
That was a caution, in order to bring that site up to grade, to match the reclamation plan based on what we saw in the field. That's what we talked about.
Because on the previous page, it mentions 40,000 yards also.
Yep.
What does all that mean to you guys?
I'd just like to say, I think it means he's moving forward, keep moving, and hopefully November, it becomes a golf course under construction.
And if you put it all together,
I want to know what Scott thinks about it.
well, there we go. Mr.
Do you
Connors?
really want to know? Because I'm trying to be quiet about how I feel about it. I threw some caution out. We keep moving this extension down the road. I thought it was an administrative approval to give you some more time, and what I'm saying is, you should firm it up here in a public forum.
Is that doable?
I agree with Scott. Imagine that, put that down in public record too.
Oh, yes.
It's been once or twice over the last couple decades.
As of today, February 18th, where are you at with fill? How much more fill do you think you have?
We haven't brought a whole lot in. We've probably brought in 5,000 yards since we've brought in some topsoil, but we will be done the 3 months that you gave the extension, or whatever we classify that at, so you won't see me again.
So here we go in the minutes. Chairman Wash recommends that in February 2020, the application applies to close the mine. From April through June, all final grading and seeding, and then in late September, a final group visit to inspect and close out the mineral mining. At that point, it would transition to soil erosion. So there wasn't really a motion.
Well, we can put it into motion now, if you like.
Was the intention that you guys had to give him till June?
But here's what I would offer, because I can see where Scott's going with this, so
It's not too veiled.
No. I think it's probably good practice, that there should be some kind of motion at this point, to say that from April to June of 2020, no more than. Through June, thank you. April through June, no more than 40,000 yards of fill can be brought into the site, to restore the site. And that we will hold a on-site closeout meeting in October of 2020, followed by a public hearing in November 2020 to officially close out all activities per section 34.308. That kind of boxes it in, and it keeps us going for the rest of the year. And I would also add on there, we didn't get a fence certification letter, so why don't we throw that on there as well? Even, because I'm sure there are still some slopes out there that should be fenced. Fences are down. Okay, so we're done where we don't have cliffs out there anymore? Okay, so we can jump past that then. So that would be my motion, that I would ask someone else to take and run with because the chair shouldn't do the motion.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yes.
So as I'm listening to you and following through the minutes from last fall, I think it is, from November 26th, sounds fairly in line with what was discussed then, that the fill would be coming in this year, April through June. Simply moving that closing out from September to October.
And I think what Scott's saying is those summary comments before general public comment were not in a motion format.
Okay.
So he's saying, let's get all that in a motion, and I agree with that.
So it's pretty much the same thing, just making it official.
Yes.
It was
Got
a
it.
discussion in a sand pit, a lot like an old Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. So I think it's time to firm it up.
You're assuming I get that reference. Which I do.
Okay.
There you go. So any other comments from the board?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Kent.
I agree with everything that, as far as putting it in the minutes and everything, but, you know, everybody prior to this, as long as things keep going good, that, you know, I think it's a doable thing, and so hopefully we have a good summer and, it gets done, so, but, I think we all agreed, basically it was a good timeline to put in there, and hopefully it's doable, so. What's that? Yes.
Well, I would ask that whoever creates that motion also refer to the site plan review, approval of the planning commission, and the conditions that came with that, because I don't want to lose sight of, there's probably half a dozen things in there that were kind of important we don't want to lose touch with.
You don't want to do this motion?
No, I'm good.
So my notes are pretty messy. I don't know if I'm quite prepared to craft a motion yet. Are you writing down some of the notes?
I am writing my own shorthand, but I'll tell you what we have so far. Based on what we said in November 26th at the Mineral Mining Board, that from April through June of 2020, there shall be all final grading and seeding, not more than 40,000 cubic yards of fill being brought in to restore the site. Noting all planning commission conditions of approval relative to the golf course. I don't have that case number in front of me. And then we will hold an on-site meeting in October where we will look for verification in the field that the site is ready to be closed out, and that would be followed by a public hearing in November to officially close out the operations on the mine. So that, I think, is the motion. So all we need is a sponsor and a second.
Sponsor.
And I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion?
I wouldn't worry too much about the volume of the fill, because I think that's going to be all you can do to get that in there before July 1st. So thinking from a bookkeeping standpoint, we don't want to have to count that, right? That's silly to debate over that. July 1st, done. Okay.
July 15, we'll have it graded up.
I support that amendment to the motion.
I amend the motion to support it.
Just making it easy on staff, I think.
Okay. Yes. So we'll go with that, and Laura and I will craft that up. There'll just be, July 1 is the end, essentially, of hauling activity on the site. And then the rest will be finished grading. And construction. Okay, we have a motion and support. Any further discussion on that? Okay, look for a vote then. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, Mr. Schimmel, thank you very much for your patience.
So we have to schedule one more meeting for the first, for MECOF, is that right?
Yep. So once we get all the Meekoff material in from this morning, then we'll schedule another meeting of this board.
Do we have to shoehorn that in before March 1st?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope, I think what happens is they expire. So if they're not